On their son's first birthday, Yuan Hong and Chang Liqing went to a hot pot restaurant. Since their child was born, opportunities for them to dine out together had been scarce. Perhaps it was because they both understood how hard Yuan Hong worked, and their little one was sleeping peacefully in the car. While they were halfway through the hot pot, Yuan Hong's mother called. Yuan Hong thought that since it was their child's birthday, her mother was just checking in to send her regards. Naturally, this kind of call, which would boost her mother's pride, needed to be answered in front of her husband Chang Liqing. Yuan Hong took the call and put it on speaker. What she didn't expect was that her mother would first ask if Chang Liqing was there. Having known her mother so well, Yuan Hong could tell that whatever came next wasn't something she wanted Chang Liqing to hear. At that moment, Chang Liqing was sitting across from her, calmly chewing on a piece of lamb. Regarding the house you bought in XX community, transfer it to your older brother first. His child is starting primary school this year, while your son is still too young. It's a 6-year cycle for school registration, so you can get it back when your son starts school, Yuan Hong's mother said. Yuan Hong didn't know how to respond. Her mother advised her to handle this matter as soon as possible. She suggested that Yuan Hong talk to her older brother and sister-in-law about it when she returned. According to her mother, there was no need to discuss it. They should just go along with her suggestion. The call ended, but the meal had lost its flavor. Yuan Hong said, "My mother's suggestion is..." Chang Liqing, with a calm expression, interrupted her, "I heard everything. Your mother spoke loudly enough for me to hear." After they finished the meal and returned home, both of them seemed unenthusiastic. After their child went to sleep, Chang Liqing was washing the baby's clothes in the bathroom. Yuan Hong mopped the floor, first in the bedroom, then the living room, and finally the kitchen, before heading to the bathroom to wash the mop. Chang Liqing was squatting in the bathroom, facing inward, and his expression was hidden. Yuan Hong could tell he was feeling uneasy. They had spent a long time choosing that house, their first property as a married couple. They had just moved in at the beginning of the year. The house was twice as expensive as others in the neighborhood, had a great layout, a pleasant environment, and was close to the school. Chang Liqing had carefully chosen it for their child. Now, her mother was forcing them to transfer it to her older brother, and it was uncomfortable for anyone. Yuan Hong didn't know how to broach the subject. She decided to bring it up before going to bed. She said, "Actually, my mother isn't entirely wrong, it's about maximizing benefits." Chang Liqing replied, "Do whatever you want." Yuan Hong said, "My older brother is not a stranger. We're all family, and it's normal to help each other out." Chang Liqing said, "I never said that your family was a stranger. Since we got married, you've been the one in charge at home, haven't you? I've never opposed anything. You don't need to consult me, you can do whatever you want. I know that if I say a couple more words, you'll just argue with me again. You said that when we got married, your mother didn't demand a big dowry, and she didn't ask for a house. I was given a wife for free." Yuan Hong said, "But that's the truth." Chang Liqing remarked, "If I'd known your appetite was so big, I should have just bought you out early." Yuan Hong responded, "Your words are a bit harsh. What do you mean by bought out? How do you see me?" She pulled the covers over herself and turned away from Chang Liqing. Chang Liqing was likely already carrying a lot of pent-up frustration for him to say such things. Over the years, their small family had probably provided at least 20,000 yuan for Yuan Hong's family, officially or unofficially. In the previous years, as they saved up to buy a house, Yuan Hong's mother had said that her older brother had a child, the old house was too small, and he needed to buy a new one first. Yuan Hong had contributed a substantial portion of the down payment, but it wasn't clear whether it was a gift or a loan. In her mother's words, their family was different from those who counted every cent. Siblings didn't need to talk about such formalities. The interest classes for her nephew, as well as the medical expenses of the entire family, have been counted under Yuan Hong's name. The private amounts she gave to her mother are not clearly remembered by Yuan Hong. Some money needs to be spent, but Yuan Hong knows that her mother's demands are not entirely reasonable. However, every time she needs money, her mother always has a convincing argument. She claims that money is something that you can't take with you when you die. She says, "Your father and I are getting old, and we won't live much longer. All the money we've given you is to help you out. Furthermore, men are fickle creatures. Women need to be clever and save for themselves. Regarding your relationship with your brother, remember, we're all one family, and money, whether it's in your home or his, ultimately benefits us all. Make peace with your brother, sister-in-law, and nephew, and you'll always have a home here. These words may sound reasonable at first, but with a little thought, Yuan Hong would realize that there were several issues. While it's true that the money was meant to benefit Yuan Hong, it was her who gave the red envelopes for her son's full-month celebration, which were then taken out and displayed by her mother. The elderly lady said, "Wool comes from sheep, and a girl's family always contributes in one way or another. Money given away is never seen again, and this situation was even cleaner than a dog snatching a meat bun." Over the years, Cheng Liqing's easygoing nature meant he didn't make a fuss. The old lady paid attention to many things, and Yuan Hong thought it was normal. Before marrying Cheng Liqing, Yuan Hong had a boyfriend with whom she had a deep and long-standing relationship. They were both locals and had been together since high school, through college. Their families had already met, and a dowry had been agreed upon. They were just waiting for the couple to graduate from college to get married. The boyfriend often came to Yuan Hong's home to accompany her father for drinks, and his sweet words were impressive, leaving Yuan Hong's parents very satisfied. After graduating, they were both busy preparing for civil service exams, and the wedding plans were postponed. Her parents were anxious because Yuan Hong was a girl, and the boyfriend's family was calm, saying the child was still young, and there was no rush for another year or two. 2 years later, the boyfriend passed a civil service exam and joined a water conservancy bureau. Yuan Hong prepared for the civil service for 2 years but did not succeed. Her family was even more anxious in this situation, urging her to get married quickly. Her boyfriend remained calm and only said that they should wait another year or two, as the child was still young. After 2 more years, her boyfriend broke the promise of providing a house. Yuan Hong was still young and hadn't realized how changeable people's hearts could be. She said if they couldn't buy the house, they shouldn't get married. Her boyfriend responded, "If you don't want to get married, we won't. I'll refund the dowry." Yuan Hong thought that this was just a matter of throwing a temper tantrum and showing some frustration. Just like when she was in college, when she threw a fit on the phone, her boyfriend would take a train and arrive to meet her that very night. But overnight, her boyfriend became the most familiar stranger, and his attitude was unexpectedly stubborn. The incident had a significant impact on Yuan Hong, and for a long time, she didn't know if this outcome was accidental or inevitable, or if it was all a setup. What was more embarrassing was that the dowry received earlier had already been given to the boyfriend's future wife. Both families argued for a long time about the dowry. Yuan Hong's family felt that their daughter had been with this man for so long and had suffered a loss. The boyfriend's family believed that the relationship had been a mutual choice and that both had experienced the ups and downs. Even the boyfriend's aunts and uncles, and their aunts and uncles, came with a detailed list, listing all the expenses that the boyfriend had incurred on Yuan Hong over the years. To say that the family couldn't repay the money, Yuan Hong didn't believe it. But her parents refused to discuss it, making it clear that Yuan Hong had to figure out this money herself. Finally, Yuan Hong, in a fit of frustration, threatened to go to the man's workplace. Since her face was already lost, she might as well go down in flames with him. After a solo tantrum, the man finally relented and returned half of the 88,000 yuan, reducing it to 40,000 yuan. What chilled her heart was that the man remarried soon after without clearing the debt. He had a house, he had the dowry, and he had 3 golds, referring to gold jewelry, gold rings, and gold necklaces. In other words, his family could afford the money, but they never intended to marry Yuan Hong in the first place. After years of courtship, everyone knew about it. Now, after being jilted, and because of the dowry issue, her reputation was almost ruined. This kind of situation, which was clearly a matter between 2 people and 2 families, ended up humiliating only the female side. Disheartened for many years, when she was almost 30, someone introduced Yuan Hong to Cheng Liqing. Cheng Liqing was from out of town, and his parents were divorced with few relatives. He worked in the city's wholesale jewelry business with a relative. He was very honest and didn't use flowery language. Yuan Hong's mother didn't like him at first sight, saying he looked like a monkey, and he was a barbarian. If he died one day, Yuan Hong would be left alone. Yuan Hong said, "If you don't like him, introduce someone better to me. Right now, my family doesn't even have a bed of my own, and I have to squeeze with you, my dad, and your son-in-law for the rest of my life." Her mother said, "It's your fault. You insisted on having a house back then. Now, you have to endure this suffering." Yuan Hong felt that given her circumstances, having someone interested in her was already good. When they first met, Chang Liqing couldn't even look Yuan Hong in the eyes. In this day and age, encountering a man who was still shy was rarer than seeing a pig climb a tree. After spending some time together, Yuan Hong felt that he was, despite his simplicity, quite admirable. She visited Chang Liqing's house, which was kept spotlessly clean. Even though he was a big man, he could cook delicate southern dishes, and even simple dishes like green pepper and potato shreds were prepared beautifully. In her hometown, regardless of whether a family was rich or poor, the man was treated like a king, and the women served him as if he were the prince. Yuan Hong's father was over 50, and he couldn't even cook noodles properly. Every morning, Yuan Hong's mother put his socks on and helped him put on his shoes. She even trimmed his nails. When Yuan Hong talked to her mother about these things, her mother said, "A man who can do housework and cook, what does it prove? It proves that the family is poor. Have you ever seen a rich man cook? You're just compromising and finding excuses for yourself." In any case, Yuan Hong's mother looked down on Chang Liqing a bit. The more she did, the more Yuan Hong wanted to prove that her man was good. She often said that Chang Liqing was honest, generous, and capable. She didn't care if her mother wanted to hear it or not. Their wedding was a simple affair with just 2 tables. Yuan Hong gave her mother 50,000 yuan, including 20,000 yuan from Chang Liqing, and she added another 30,000 yuan. Her mother, in front of a group of relatives, said, "You young people have it hard. I won't take your dowry, just treat my daughter well." Everyone knew about the previous incidents involving Yuan Hong, and they knew that she had married a man without money. Her mother's words were just for show. In these past few years, the bride price in the local area has been rising sharply, and the amount Yuan Hong gave was considered quite modest compared to the local standards. Her mother decided to forego it, which gave her a reputation for being concerned about her child. Because of this, Yuan Hong had the upper hand in their marriage. She could call the shots, making decisions in her favor. In the 3rd year of their marriage, when the pandemic forced relatives to return to their hometowns for work, Yuan Hong and Chang Liqing took over a jewelry store. As the saying goes, when things reach their extreme, they will reverse, and when things get worse, they will get better. The store already had a customer base, and after the pandemic, people went on a spending spree, allowing the couple to make a good profit. Although Chang Liqing was honest and organized, Yuan Hong was more enterprising and had a sweet tongue. Together, they cultivated a loyal customer base, totaling around 10 regulars. For her family, big or small matters, Yuan Hong took the lead in terms of money and effort, always ready to help. The past events made her family lose face, and these years of unrestrained financial support were more about self-assertion for her. She was willing to compromise herself to prove her worth to her parents and those relatives and neighbors who once laughed at her. Her own house was not yet purchased, but she helped her brother and sister-in-law buy one. She thought that if her daughter paid for it, her parents could move in as well. Chang Liqing had never shown any signs of discontent about this, but today was the first time he had acted this way. Yuan Hong found some time to visit her family. Her mother was cooking in the kitchen and told her to talk to her sister-in-law about her child's schooling later and to be more polite. Her sister-in-law had been in a bad mood these past few days. Yuan Hong replied, "I'm in a worse mood. I haven't seen you show any concern for me." Her mother said, "Compared to her, you're my daughter, and you're married into the family. By the way, the house is now officially using water and electricity. You can pay the water and electricity bills online." Yuan Hong said, "Sure, give me your phone, and I'll set it up for you." Her mother didn't respond. After a while, she said, "If I hadn't met our neighbor, Mrs. Hao, today when I went out, I wouldn't have known you could pay the bills on your phone." Mrs. Hao said that water and electricity bills were linked to her daughter's phone, and they were automatically deducted every month, which was very convenient. Yuan Hong realized that her mother was hinting at her. Binding it to your phone is the same thing. In any case, the money is mine. Her mother's face tightened, saying, "There's no money on my phone. Where do I get the money from?" Yuan Hong said, "Where have you been keeping all the money I've given you over the years?" Her mother said, "How can you say that? This money is given to me, so it's mine. How can a daughter give money to her mother and then ask her how she spent it? Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed?" As the dinner time approached, Yuan Hong's father picked up his grandson and her brother was working overtime and wouldn't be back. When her sister-in-law also finished work and returned, everyone gathered for the meal. Suddenly, her nephew threw a tantrum, saying he didn't want to go to the preparatory class for the primary school entrance exam anymore. He was frustrated with it, he couldn't write pinyin properly, and the teacher was very strict. Yuanhong's mother said, "How can you not go? If you don't go, how will you go to college in the future?" The little nephew replied, "I don't want to go to college, it costs so much money. It's like my aunt, who spent hundreds of thousands, and with that much money, I could buy a car." Yuanhong said, "Who spent hundreds of thousands on college?" Her mother, under the table, stepped on her foot to signal her not to say anything. Her sister-in-law put down her chopsticks and said with a smile, "If it costs that much, then let it be. What can't you say?" Yuanhong wanted to argue, but her mother said, "Why don't you go back first? Your child can't be without his mother at night. You go back quickly, and Chang Liqing has to watch the store and take care of the child." Yuanhong was baffled by the situation. During her college years, her family had provided her with the bare minimum for living expenses. She was supposed to apply for student loans to cover her tuition. However, her then-boyfriend didn't think it was necessary, and they both contributed to her tuition. When her boyfriend's family came to create trouble, the list they provided didn't include this money, it only listed some known and apparent expenses. It was a sum of money that he probably didn't mention to his family, and that's why Yuanhong didn't harbor hatred towards him. Thinking further, she realized that her family had always been making big demands. Initially, she thought her mother was genuinely concerned about her, wanting to save money for her to ensure she wouldn't be deceived by another man. However, based on today's situation, it appeared her mother wasn't genuinely saving money for her. Her brother and sister-in-law, too, seemed to be taking advantage of her and were even eyeing the house she bought with Chang Liqing. Yuanhong now believed that if someone like her sister-in-law could be so greedy, it meant their household wasn't clean from the start. She thought that if she had a mother-in-law like her mother, who constantly spouted nonsense and irrational arguments, she would be driven mad. She remembered the relatives who often talked in front of a large family, praising her parents for their hard work to put her through college, and how she should be grateful. In the past, she thought it was a common thing, but now she realized her mother was exaggerating her complaints and seeking to create a path for future demands. Yuanhong packed a large suitcase and moved into her parents' home, which had 2 bedrooms and a study converted into a bedroom for her nephew. She slept on the floor in the living room with her child. When her child cried at night, she would get up to soothe him, preparing formula milk. Her family members voiced their objections, but Yuanhong pretended not to see them. Her nephew asked her, "Aunt, why haven't you left? Don't you have your own home?" Yuanhong replied, "Who told you that? When we bought this house, I contributed the most money." Her nephew asked what contributing the most money meant, and his mother pulled him into the room to do his homework. When there was no one else around, Yuanhong's mother asked her what was going on and why she wasn't returning home. Yuanhong explained that Chang Liqing was being unreasonable and wouldn't let her transfer the house to her brother. He said that if she had that intention, he would divorce her. Yuanhong was frustrated with him, saying that he had no right to dictate their family's affairs. Her mother hesitated to confront Chang Liqing and patiently waited for updates. After over a month with no progress, Yuanhong returned with her child, wearing a mournful expression, and said that Chang Liqing had cleared out the store, left with the money, returned the rented house, and seemed to want nothing to do with their child. Yuanhong's mother collapsed, saying, "You've really had a tough life, always encountering these kinds of men. Your luck is truly awful." The family discussed the possibility of reporting the matter to the police, and Yuanhong, her voice trembling, exclaimed, "Do you want me to feel even more ashamed? I've already been through this once. Do you need me to be utterly humiliated in front of everyone?" After her emotional outburst, she discussed the situation further. With Changlika's departure, she would have to manage the store and take care of her child on her own. Her mother would have to help look after the child, and the store had outstanding debts. Over the years, Yuanhong had stored her money with her mother, using it to cover emergencies. She believed that they would manage to get through this tough period and continue running the jewelry store as usual. The family fell into silence. Yuanhong's sister-in-law said, "The marriage certificate is still there. Let's see where he can run off to." Yuanhong retorted, "What's the use of a marriage certificate these days? He was a penniless man to begin with. That barbarian is just malicious. How did I not see this over the years? A spineless man can be this heartless." Yuanhong's father chimed in, "Why don't you talk to him? Let's forget about the house. We can still go to school. I heard they've transferred several excellent old teachers here this year. Yuan Hong replied, I won't. I run this household, and what I say goes. Yuan Hong's father slammed his hand on the table and said, nonsense. You were just like this back then, insisting that people listen to you about buying the house. Look at how that turned out. I think you just don't learn. If you won't go, I'll talk to him. Yuan Hong retorted, what's there to say to him? He's utterly useless. He can't even keep up with you, let alone share a drink with you. Yuan Hong's father said, what's the use of that stuff? Quitting smoking and drinking ensures good health. I think that child is decent, and you with your bad temper need someone like him to keep you in line. During the National Day holiday, Yuan Hong's house was fully renovated, and she didn't inform anyone. Since the previous divorce incident, her family likely feared that her divorce would cause trouble, so they didn't call her often. During this period of ups and downs, Yuan Hong didn't talk to Chenglika. In that month and a half, she and her husband had conflicts over the house issue. Yuan Hong insisted that Chenglika had to handle the purchasing decisions for their jewelry store, as she was preoccupied with motherhood. When Chenglika left, she went to her parents' house for over a month. Her oblivious husband didn't know about the turmoil. On the way back, Chenglika mentioned that he had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He suggested that it wouldn't hurt to let her brother use the house temporarily. Yuan Hong rejected the idea, emphasizing that the house belonged to both of them, and no one could take it away. Chenglika looked at her with surprise, as she had always been firm in not allowing anyone to criticize her family. Yuan Hong didn't feel like explaining herself. Instead, she recalled a quote from Lu Sun, stating that Chinese people tend to seek compromise. If someone wants to open a window in a pitch-black room, the other party is sure to disagree. But if you propose to tear off the entire roof, they will quickly agree. Everyone has a different perspective, different beliefs, and different ways of handling things. She believed that while she could understand others, she shouldn't sacrifice herself for everyone, becoming a tool for others to exploit, even if those others were family, loved ones, or children. She also thought of her ex-boyfriend, hearing that he was doing well now. In reality, it was a good thing. They had genuinely loved each other when they were together, and when that love faded, they parted ways. It was better to have second thoughts before getting married. Marriage can get messy after a while. In her 30s, Yuan Hong believed she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. As long as she felt that she was living well, that was what truly mattered.